Welcome to Autodesk Inventor. You guys have seen it a little bit and you've played around in it, but we're going to dive in and use a few of the tools a little bit more correctly and really get into how to model using Autodesk Inventor, starting with modeling what's called a machinist square. Before we go into actually modeling things, I want to walk you through the Autodesk Inventor space. So when you start Inventor, you should see this screen here. And we have things to create new files. I'll get to those in a second. Here we have recently used files, and sometimes these files don't show up. So these are all the things I've been working on recently, but sometimes your parts won't show up. And when that happens, that's okay. You just go here and click Open, and it will take you to your H drive or your My Documents, and then you find it, and you can open documents from there. And then up here we have the ribbon, which has different tools that we don't really need other than maybe new and open sometimes. So Autodesk Inventor uses three primary parts. We use the part to make individual parts. These are things by themselves, so like a screw or a bracket, or say look at your table that you usually sit at. Just the tabletop would be a part, and then the metal legs would be a separate bracket, and then the feet would be a separate part. Each of those would be individual parts. So you would have a different file for every single part that you make. Then you take all those parts and you put them together in assemblies. So in your assembly, if you were making this table, you would actually, in this assembly area, attach the tabletop to the legs of the table and attach the feet to those legs. So you're putting it together like you would in real life. Then you have drawing, where you make what's called working drawings. So those are your dimension drawings. These are very similar to what you might have done by drawing by hand, either in sketching practice or using a drafting board in T-square. So generally we start with parts, then we move on to assemblies after we put all the parts together, or make all the parts, and then we move on to drawings. And the cool thing about Autodesk Inventor is everything works together. So say we make something in our parts, we start assembling, and we realize something's wrong. I can update my part, and it'll automatically update my assembly. Same with my working drawings. Everything will automatically update from one to the other. So all the parts, or all the different types of files, work together. So we're going to start off by part, so click on part. And whenever it loads, we will start with that. Hey, there we go. All right, so now we have our part screen. This main big gray gradient box is our work area. We then, along our right-hand side, have what's called our browser, and this will show every step that you do to make your part. Then up here we have our ribbon, and we have different tabs here, so we can see different things. And the two we mainly use are going to be 3D Model and Sketch. And then over here we have our view cube, which I'll show you in a little bit as well. So something that happens sometimes is you'll accidentally close that and keep going, and then try to do something later and can't because your browser isn't there anymore. So if you lose your browser, you go to View, User Interface, and Browser. And hey, it pops back up. Now something else sometimes what you do is you hit this little button up here, and oh no, that changes and gets all weird and gets really annoying to deal with. Or you accidentally got that and it just disappears. So when you do that, just hit this button here a few times until it pops back up and you have everything there. So Autodesk Inventor works by taking two-dimensional drawings or objects and making them 3D. So we start with a 2D sketch. We sketch out a flat object, and it becomes three-dimensional using then these tools. We then modify that 3D object using these tools to then make our actual objects. So let's start with a 2D sketch. And if you you usually click on the icon, but say you click on the little drop down, you can make a start 2D sketch or start 3D sketch. We don't use 3D sketches yet, so always just click start 2D sketch. And you get this crazy looking thing here. It's all weird and stuff. And this is our 3 planes. So if you remember from math class, you have like your X and your Y plane. Well, this is essentially that. So you have your XY plane, which corresponds to the front of your object. You have the YZ plane, which corresponds to the side of your object. And you have your XZ plane, which corresponds to the top of your object. So whenever you draw your part, you need to usually think, which way do I need to draw my object? Am I looking at it from the front? Am I looking at it from the side or the top when I first start my object? So let's say we start on the front of the object. And we have a couple different things here. So I have a dot right here, and that's called my origin. That in math terms on your XY coordinates is 0, 0. It is the only space Inventor knows, is that dot right there. If I put a line there, Inventor doesn't know where that is because it's not in relation yet to that dot. So every drawing we make has to correspond to the origin. We really should start it on the origin, or at least at some point get it to the origin. So when I start a sketch, you notice things changed up here. And one of the cool things about Inventor is, say I want to know, what's a rectangle tool? I hover over it, and it'll actually show me, it creates a rectangle using 2 points for a diagonal corner. If I click a little drop down, there's a whole bunch of different types of rectangles. What's a slot tool, center point arc? This will then tell me what it does. So every one of these tools, I can hover over, and it'll tell me what it does. So if you're ever lost, you can always just hover over something and know what it does exactly. And it sometimes even gives you a little video, as is right here. It doesn't like it right now. Hey, there's a video. So it shows you how that works. How do I get out of that? Oh, good. That's stuck, apparently. Alright, I'm going to have to close this part out to get rid of that. Really? Alright, let's just close Inventor and come back. There we go. Alright, let's launch Inventor, and as that's launching, we'll talk about our first part. So your first part will be this. This is a machinist square. It's a fairly simple part. If you look, you have this blade part here. So you have that blade part, and then you have a holder for it there. So it's 2 different parts we're going to have to make. Plus, we're going to make these drill rod rivets, 4 of them, to secure it all together. Now, I have copies of this on the front of my classroom, but if you ever need to see this digitally, if you just go to the goodies drive, you can go down to Tech Ed, Cohen, Engineering Drawing, Machinist Square, and there's the PDF of it. That's this file right here. So I'm going to start with the easy part first, which is going to be my blade. My blade is literally a rectangle, and that's it. And then I'm going to, come back. Then I'm going to make the holder for it, and then I'll make the drill rod rivets. So again, I'm going to go back to part and wait for it to load forever. And we can see here that if I'm starting with my blade, the blade is 6 inches long. I see that because I have a dimension line here, and it goes to extension lines which come down to either end of the blade. So the blade is 6 inches long or wide, it's 1 inch tall, and it's 1/8 of an inch deep. So in Inventor, I'm going to start in 2D Sketch and start sketching on my front plane. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. So I click on my origin, and we start on my origin. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm just going to make it any size I want. Now notice 2 lines are blue and 2 lines are green. The blue lines mean that they can't move. I can't slide them back and forth or anything. Green lines, though, I can slide. So I can make them go up or down. I can even do them at both same times. So I need to put dimensions on this 6-inch and this 1-inch, to lock them into place. So to do that, I click on dimension, I click on the line, and I can just type in 6. Now, my object got really, really big. To zoom out so it fits everything, I can just click on front, and it zooms out so I see everything. Now, this line is blue, this line is green, because again, I can't move that line, but I still can move this line. So to keep this line from moving, I essentially have to dimension a line that's blue, because that one can get longer. It just can't physically move back and forth. So let's do that. We start here, so last time I just clicked on line, but we can also click on endpoint. So I can go from endpoint to endpoint and just type in my number. And there's my blade. In 2 dimensions though. So now I'm going to make this 3-dimensional. I can go to my 3D model tab, and we want to just make it 3D by using the Extrude tool. So I click on Extrude, and it'll automatically pick this surface because that's the only one there. And we can see that it is 1/8 of an inch wide. So instead of figuring out the fraction size of that, I can just type in, if I click my little drop-down box here, I can type in 1 divided by 8, and it'll do that math for me and figure it out. That's 0.125. Click OK, and there's my blade. Now, going back to this view cube, there's my front side, and then I can rotate it to my top or my right side, and I can always go home and get back to this isometric view of it. I can even rotate at angles, and I can hold and drag on it too. Now, it doesn't say what kind of material this is, but it's usually steel, and Inventor actually gives us different materials for these objects. So where it says generic up here, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to scroll down to find steel. And I'll change the color so it's now steel, and it will change the properties of it as well, like the weight and everything. Now steel is, or these things are often a machined surface. They're very, very smooth, they're precision made. So I'm going to click on Machine 02 on this other one, and that will change the color of it just to show how it might be in real life. So this part's done, and I'm going to go to the big eye in the corner and go to Save, to then save this part in my H drive. I'm going to make a new folder and call it Engineering Drawing. And then in that folder, I'm going to make another new folder and call it Machinist Square. And save everything we do for this job in there, or for this part, so that we all have it together. And I named it Blade because that's what it is. Now, one of the cool things about Inventor is I can check your work really easily. I can right-click on blade.ipt, go down to Eye Properties, and go to Physical. Here, I click Update, and this gives me the weight. So this object in real life would weigh 0.213 pounds. So I know if you made this part right by just looking at the weight. If you didn't make it right, your weight will be off. No matter what you do, your weight will be off. So this is how I usually check your work, is I'll have you pull this screen up right here, and I'll just check your weight. And I expect it to be exactly 0.213, not 0.214, not 0.3. It needs to be exactly that mass to be good. All right, so there's our blade. Let's now move on to our handle. So I'm going to create a new part, and I can do this by just clicking on the New button right up here. I get this menu here, and I have part, create 2D or 3D objects, and I want a standard part. So I double click on it, and I have a new part screen. So looking at this handle, I have a object that is 1 inch wide by 3/8 inch deep by 4 inches tall, and I have some marks on it too. Those are where some holes go to hold these drill rod rivets. So let's do that. I'm going to start 2D sketch, and I'm going to click on my front plane again. And instead of drawing a rectangle, I'm going to use the line tool now. So I start again at my origin. I'm going to go over, and notice I can go at an angle. I could make this thing almost straight, but you can tell it's 2.06 degrees. That's not exactly straight, so that won't work. I want to make sure it's exactly straight. And when we do that, we see that little icon that pops up. That means it's exactly horizontal. So I'm just going to click and then go up again. And again, I need to make sure it's not at an angle. You can see my little thing that says right now I'm 88.59 degrees. Well, I want that to be 90. So I'm going to go up until it hits 90. Again, a little icon pops up. And I'm going to make sure all of my lines are exactly straight. Some of you really struggle with that, and you really need to get good at that. To get out of the line tool, then, I just click escape on my keyboard, and I'm no longer in a line tool. So I can dimension this of 1 inch wide by 4 inches tall. So I click on dimension, go on the bottom, 1 inch wide, and then its height is 4 inches. Then click front to see the whole object. And now I can extrude it to be 3/8 of an inch deep. So I just go to extrude by going to 3D model, extrude. And again, for my distance, I can type in 3 divided by 8 to get 0.375. Automatically do it for me. And there it is. There's my handle so far. Now, one of the other things about the handle is this blade cuts through it. There's like a slot that we need to make. So we need to make that slot. And we can tell that slot is 1/8 of an inch in from it. It's 1/8 of an inch deep because our blade's 1/8 of an inch deep. And it's 7/8 of an inch tall. So I'm going to look at the side of my object by using my view cube. And I'm going to start a new 2D sketch on that side. Then I need to draw a cutout right here, and then remove it. So to do that, I'm going to just use my rectangle tool. I'm going to snap it onto this top line, bring it over, and just make it any dimension right now. It doesn't really matter. Then I click on my dimensions, and I know my slot is 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch wide, and it is, what was it, 7/8 of an inch tall, or 0.875. But while my rectangle's dimensioned, it can still move. I could actually have it over there, or I could have it like partially on it. And I need it to be exactly 0.125 from the edge, as it says here, in 1/8 of an inch from the beginning of my blade to the end of the handle. So I'm going to do a dimension from this line to the end of my handle. Sorry, let's try again. And then I can just click and do 1/8 of an inch. And now everything's blue. You want to make sure every single line is blue to make sure it's good. And make sure it's properly dimensioned. So I click on 3D model, click on extrude, and now it doesn't automatically select it for me anymore because there's multiple things I can select. So I'm going to select this rectangle, and it's adding to it now. I don't want to add. So I'm going to make it cut away by, in this middle, the first option is join, that's adding stuff. My second option is cut away, and my third option is something we'll get to later. It automatically flips the direction, and I can say the distance that I want to cut. Well, I want it to cut forever, so I'm going to click on distance and go all the way down to all, and have it cut all the way through the object. And now I have a slot cut through it. Then my last step for this is these 4 marks here, which represent holes for these drill rods to go through. So you can see they start 3/16 of an inch down. That's half an inch down from there, and 5/8 of an inch over, and 3/16 over from the very edge. So I'm going to make a new sketch and click on the front of my part. And to do this, because these are points to represent holes, I'm going to use our point to tool, which if I hover over, it creates either a sketch point or a center point, depending on the setting. And essentially what that means is it just creates a point to be the center of a circle. I'm going to just make 4 points, doesn't really matter where. I'm going to add dimensions now. So we can see this point is 3/16 of an inch down from the very top and 3/16 over from the edge. So I'm going to go to dimension and click on the point, click on my end line, and type in 3 divided by 16 to get 0.1875. And then also from the very top, I want it to be 0.1875. Now, this number, if I double click on it, is 0.1875, but it says here 0.188. That's okay. Inventor automatically rounds to 3 decimal places. Let me make that a little easier for you to see. There we go. A little easier for you to see now. So now, our dimensions are half an inch down from this top one to this one, and then 5/8 of an inch over. So I'm going to dimension half an inch down, or 0.5, and then 5/8 of an inch over, or 5 divided by 8, to get 0.625. Now, all my dimensions are there, but I can still move the part because I told this one that it's 0.5 down from here, but I didn't tell it how far over it could go. Same with this one. I told it how far over it could go, but I didn't tell it how far high it has to go. So I'm going to tell Inventor to lock this one to this one horizontally, this one to this one vertically, this one to this one horizontally, and this one to this one vertically. And I'll line everything up. To do that, I use a constraint tool. A constraint tool uses geometric constraints, so like parallel or perpendicular, or horizontal and vertical, things like that, to lock things together. So I'm going to hover over this, and this one is a horizontal constraint. And it causes lines to essentially become horizontal, or makes 2 lines or points horizontal to each other. So I'm going to click on that. Click on this first one that's blue, because blue means that it's fully dimensioned, it can't move. And I'm going to click on this next one, and watch what happens when I click on it. It pops up there and is now in line with it. Then I'm going to do the same thing from this one to this one so that they stay on the same line as well. Now I'm going to do vertical constraints. Same thing, but horizontal. So I want to go from here to here, and now that's horizontal, or vertical, sorry. From here to here, and now that's vertical as well. So now I have 4 points that we can see that are fully blue, fully constrained, nothing can move on them. So I accidentally clicked Finish Sketch. I'm out of my sketch now. And what a lot of you do to get back into the sketch is you create a new sketch, which is totally the wrong thing to do. If you do that, Inventor gets really confused, and it's one of the few ways I've seen to really break Inventor. So to get this correct, we need to get back into that sketch. To do that, we look at our browser, and so far we have these 2 extrusions, and then lastly we have sketch 3, and that's where we drew these 4 points. I'm just going to double click on sketch 3 to get that there. Once we get that, we can make these holes that are a diameter of 0.125 inches, because that's how big our drill rods are. So to do that, I'm going to click 3D model, and there's a hole tool here to make holes, and I'm going to click on that, and Inventor automatically recognizes that, hey, you probably want to put holes where these points are. Problem is, though, my holes are too big right now. The diameter is only, again, 0.125 inches. So right here where it says that's our diameter, I want to do 0.125. Now, I also have a distance here, and I want to go through everything. So I'm going to just click on that and click through all. And then we can see now that there's 4 little holes essentially going through everything. Click OK, and hey, look, some holes. And that's it for this part. So the last thing we got to do is change the material. These handles are typically made out of either wood or metal. Let's go with wood because it's pretty. So I'm going to scroll down and let's pick, well, cherry is my favorite wood. It's super, super pretty. So I'm going to click on cherry. Oh, look at that pretty cherry there, even though that doesn't look like cherry at all. So now we have our cherry, for some reason, handle. I'm going to check our eye properties. So I right click on the part, go to eye properties, go to physical, click update, and it should have a mass of 0.031 pounds. So lastly, I save the part and save this as handle. All right, so those are our 2 parts. Our last part are these drill rods. So I need drill rods that are 0.125 inches in diameter, and they need to go the full depth of our machinist square, so they're going to go 3/8 of an inch long. So I'm going to go to a new part and create a new sketch. And I'm going to go on the side view right now. And this one's really easy. I'm going to draw a circle starting at my origin. So instead of going to clicking and then drawing a dimension, I can actually just type in my dimension as I'm drawing. And it'll automatically put in a dimension of 0.125 inches. Now I can go to Extrude and make it 3/8 of an inch. Yep, 3/8 of an inch thick. And there it is. That's it. Last step is to change the material. Let's make this out of steel as well, and we can leave the color the same. And if we were to check our mass on this thing, it would be 0.001 pounds. So kind of light. Let's save it as pin. Now, there's 4 of them because it says 4 required. We do not need to make 4 though. We can copy this part 4 times. So now you should have, oh, that's not where I want to be. You should now have all 3 parts made and in a folder ready for assembly. So once you have these 3 parts ready and your masses are correct, and that's an important part, you can move on to the next video for assemblies.